Are you tired of spending countless amounts of money on getting portraits done of you and your loved ones? Don't you wish you could just do them yourself? My name is Gina and I'm a photography major, and I'm going to give you some easy tips so that you can take professional looking photographs. There's just a couple simple guidelines to follow, and that's guidelines about composition, lighting, and posing. Composition is really just a set of guidelines that are going to make your pictures pleasing to your viewer's eye. One of the most common rules of composition is the rule of thirds, and the rule of thirds basically just breaks up your scene into 9 different parts. It breaks it into thirds going horizontally and vertically. According to the Digital School of Photography, the theory behind this is that if you put your main points on the lines that intersect and then just any of the lines in general, your picture is going to be more natural and more balanced. And studies show that naturally your viewer is going to look at the lines first and not just at the center. 2 important tips while you think about the rule of thirds is that what are your points of interest in your photograph and where did you want your scene to set? And it's not, once you decide, kind of play with the rule of thirds and figure out what it's all about, you can start to experiment and kind of break that rule a little bit, because it's not horrible if you put your subject in the center. It can be very interesting, or if you put it in the edge of the shot, but you kind of want to play with the space and give your model room to look into your shot. And you can always play with eye contact with portraits. You can have your model look at something that's in the frame that can create a second point of interest, and it can turn your picture into more of a story. And they don't have to constantly be staring at the lens. You can be a little bit more unique. And it's interesting also to have them look off of the frame. And it will make your viewers more emotionally involved with them. But be careful, because if you do this, sometimes your viewer's eye can just slip right past, and look at your subject and then just keep going right off the frame. A couple other rules about composition is to look for patterns within your photograph, symmetry so that it'll stay balanced, texture. Texture can make your picture come alive and look three-dimensional and make it have a little bit cooler effect. And then lines. Lines will lead your viewer's eye to the focal point of your picture. And then another thing is depth of field. Depth of field basically it refers to the distance between the nearest and the farthest objects in your scene that are sharp. So if you can use depth of field to isolate your subjects from the background and the foreground, and it can put the subject in the context with your location if you're outside and doing more of a natural kind of shoot. So one of the most important things in photography in general is lighting. Lighting can really make or break your pictures. If you lit it correctly, it can look amazing, but if you don't have very good lighting, it's going to look awkward and it won't be as great. There's a couple different lightings that you can do for portraits. One, side lighting, which obviously is just you're lighting your model from the side of their body or their face. And it can kind of create kind of a harsh shadow, so if you use some diffusion equipment, like you can just get a big white card, you can bounce that light back up onto the other side of their face so their shadow is not as harsh. And then there's also backlighting that can kind of create a silhouette, because it's basically just lighting your subject from the back, so you get kind of their background, and then you can tone down their features, which can kind of give it a very cool effect. And if you do hide your features of your model, it can make your portrait more powerful and maybe help give it kind of more of a story or background. And also a very important type of lighting, or to light portraits, is to make sure that your model is, you can tell their body shape from the background. So say if you have a dark background and they're wearing a black shirt, there's ways that you can light it so that the shirt won't blend in with the background. And that's really important, because it's going to look awkward if they match the background, because then you'll just have a floating head just pop out all of a sudden. So if you just use some studio lights and kind of just light them from the front, kind of put them on both sides, you can differentiate that the shirt from the background. And also, when taking pictures of the model's face or getting face-up pictures, the eyes are the most important part, because most of your viewers are going to look at their eyes. So make sure you can light it so you can get the light of their eyes, a little glint of it, and that's really important. It's a little detail, but it'll really make your eyes pop. According to Philip Greenspun, who is a studio photographer, there's 2 important elements for studio photography, and that's a controlled background so that you can avoid all the distracting elements that draws from like a more natural outside background, and then you can control the lighting a lot easier because you have lights that are on stands or they're hanging from the ceiling, and you can kind of pick which angle you want to light your portrait from so that they can, whatever light situation is best for that type of portrait. And you can also, they also have umbrellas and diffusion equipment that will kind of, so that you can pick how harsh your shadows are going to be. So you can either have it like really dramatic, or you can bounce some light back up so it's not as dramatic and you still get some detail in those shadows. There's also, if you just want to do it from the comfort of your own home, you can buy a flash kit, and those usually have lights, light stands, and umbrellas that will help you so you don't even have to leave the house when doing portraits. Another type of lighting is window lighting, which will make your portrait look a little bit more natural, and a lot of people go for that because it kind of gives it a cool effect because you have them sit by and get some shadows going. If you do window lighting and they light from one side, make sure you have a white card, which is pretty much just a big piece of white poster board, because then you can kind of put it under your model so that it will go, so that that light will go back up and hit their face so you won't have that harsh shadow. Next we come to posing. There's a lot of people don't think about shoulders when you're thinking about portraits, but they're actually a really important part of your, if you're doing like a headshot, because they are the widest part of your model, and they also bring balance to your portrait, and they kind of lead the viewer's eye to your focal point, which is their face. And some cool ways to kind of just play with your shoulders is to have maybe your model angle them a little bit or turn to the side so that you don't have to be photographing them straight on. There's also, just because you're doing portraits does not necessarily mean that you just have to do it of somebody's face or their body. You can do, like, a bunch of portrait photographers will do hands, and they are very interesting. They can be really cool, but there's some tips to keeping your hands. Just try and keep them relaxed so they don't start to get like claws. And if your model just can't, if the hands aren't showing right and they seem too stiff, you can give them something to hold or make them do an activity with their hands, or even if you just let them rest on something. And also the best shot for doing hands is usually from the side, just straight on. They can kind of turn a little bit awkward and maybe look like more like blobs than hands. According to Sean and Noonan Photography, that they have some tips that they don't want to show, that if your fingers should not be facing the lens, like pointing, and if you bend the fingers at the joints, it'll look a little bit more natural and relaxed. And also just get to know your model and see what, maybe they have a hobby that they really like to do, and you can focus on that they want to do in their shoot. Like, you can even photograph like feet of a ballet dancer or a long distance runner, or if you're doing a maternity shoot, a lot of people will like to do a belly shot of the baby, and that can also be really cool. And there's just a lot of different things you can do with that. Just kind of think about the human body and all their stuff and the particular body parts and stuff. And then there's natural posing, which is probably my favorite because it's not so staged. And you just have to understand human nature and how people react in different situations, and think about the situation. Your National Geographic photographers say just think about the situation and how you think people are going to act, and if you just anticipate their behavior, you'll be ready to find that right shot. A thing I've found with natural posing is to continuously shoot, because then you can just let your model do their natural thing and then just keep shooting, and you'll get that natural pose. Now that you understand more about composition, rules, lighting, and posing, which are the 3 most important things to remember, you're ready to take professional-looking pictures in no time. Doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, as long as you remember these tips, you should be able to save some money and do your own portraits. Thank you, and good luck.